All right, let's get started with our lovely beetroot. Today I'm using a size 8 round brush. I've got some colors mixed up already, ready to go. I've got a really lovely deep reddish pink, and I've got some green that ranges from a really bright green to a kind of more muddy browny green that I achieved by mixing some some green and some red to make this brownie warm green. And you'll see that there's also some other colours on my tray just from earlier painting that I don't think I'll be using except for maybe this orange. So basically, I think I'll be using this lovely bright reddish pink, my greens, and possibly a touch of yellowy orange. So to get started, I'm just wetting my brush and just getting the excess water off and grabbing some of this really, really vibrant pinky red. Getting heaps of it on my brush, ready to go. Grabbing a little bit of water onto my brush too, getting the excess drip off. So that was just to sort of dilute the paint a little bit more. I'm going to start with one beetroot in the center of my page, center-ish. And I'm achieving this, or I'm creating this shape by using my C curve technique. So I'm just doing a range of C curves over and over again to create this kind of bulb, I guess it is. And I'm painting on the fly a bit today. I hadn't planned this, so I was just taking requests on Instagram and beetroot was one of them. So I'm just giving it a crack as I chat to you. So I've created this kind of bulb shape and dabbed in some more of this pinky red paint with the wet in wet technique, which I do have a tutorial for, which I will link. And so I'm just going to put this little end bit of the beetroot on. I don't know, I guess this is the root. And I'm just connecting that up so it looks a little bit more natural with a couple of brush strokes. And I'm adding in a little bit more of this pink to the bulb. And I want to create some highlights in the beetroot, which I've already sort of got up here. I've got some lighter parts, but I'm washing off my brush and drying it a little, and then just dragging the brush across the beetroot just to pick up some of the paint there to create a lovely highlight. And I think now is when I'm going to use a little bit of my orange. So I'm just activating it by adding some water, diluting it by dipping my brush in my jar, and I'm just going to dab some of this yellow in across the top of the beetroot. Just a little bit there. And I might also just dab a little bit down here. And now I'm going to do our lovely beetroot leaves. So to begin with, I'm grabbing more of this pink and I'm getting it on my brush, ready to go. And I'm going to use the tip of the brush. I might dab off some excess. Use the tip of the brush to create these stems, I suppose. I never research what any of this is called ahead of time, if you couldn't tell. Anyway, there we go. I'm going to dab in some more paint here. You can see that the yellow is already bleeding up through there too. Or maybe you can't see that, but I'm sure you'll see it on your own. And now I'm rinsing off my brush and I'm going to get started with my leaves. I'm going to grab some really bright green to begin with. I haven't left heaps of room on my page, but as I said, I'm working on the fly today. So I'm using the belly of the brush and wiggling it across the page to create this leaf shape. And I'm going to do it again a few times, leaving a bit of white space between the leaves so that they don't turn into one big blob. They might touch a little, but for the most part, I want to leave some white space between them, because when you're working with loose watercolor instead of like something more detailed where you've sketched ahead of time, that sort of thing, you are relying on that white space a fair bit to kind of give you the shape of the thing that you're alluding to rather than a sketch. And I'm actually going to wash my brush in the wrong jar and grab some more of my pink and actually dab it into the tip of the leaf so that those colors do blend and bleed in together. So normally I'm avoiding that, and I've used the wrong jar again. And normally I'm actually avoiding having the colors bleeding into one another. But I think for this, I love it. So I'm going to do another beetroot, I think, behind this one. And I'm sure you've heard me say this before, unless you're new here, in which case, welcome. But I'm sure you've otherwise heard me say this before. If you don't want your colors to bleed and to create a big blob, probably wait for your first beetroot to dry and then work on your second one. But I am not practicing what I preach, so I am just like gonna paint another beetroot in behind and hope that I leave enough white space for them to not turn into a blob. So let's see how this goes. So I'm adding in another beetroot just using my C-curve technique. And I hope that I mentioned that I have a tutorial that explains what C-curves are, and if not, I'm so sorry. But I do, and I'll link to that as well so that you have some idea of what I'm on about when I'm talking about C-curves. All right, I'm running out of breath from talking so much, and I'm actually going to grab some of this deeper burgundy that's over here, which I created by literally mixing some brown with this color earlier. And I'm going to dab that in to create some more of some more shadowed effect. And I'll also do the nifty trick of drying off my brush and pulling some of that paint off the top as well to create a bit more of a highlight. And then I'm going to grab some more of that orange again. I am loving this effect with the yellow or orange bleeding into the pink. It's really cool. And I've possibly overdone it this time over here, but that's okay. And I'm going to repeat the same process as before. So painting some of these stems or whatever. My brush was too wet, so I wasn't really getting a very thin line. So I've just dried off the brush a little. And I'm running out of paint. Hopefully I'll have enough for another beetroot. This is potentially why it's best to plan ahead if you're going to paint on camera. But we're all learning, aren't we? So there we go, adding this little doodad. And maybe I'll make it a little more messy, have some little bits coming off, using just the tip of the brush for those. And I'm actually going to pull a little more paint away from here again. And I've basically run out of my initial pink, so I'm just going to grab some of this random color to my palette to do another beetroot on the other side in the background to sort of even it out. And you'll see that I'm leaving this negative space or white space between the beetroot. I'm not sure what the plural is. Anyway, and adding the stem bits. I'm just working really quickly and loosely today, which is fun. Hopefully it's not too quick for you, but you can always re-watch the video again. And I'm going to dab in some more of this color. Not much of it left. So I might even grab some brown and dab that in and see what happens. Looks pretty cool. So there we go. I'm going to grab some of my yellow and just lift up some of the paint. And I better put those leaves on that I definitely forgot about earlier. So I'll grab some green. I'll go with another really bright green in this wiggly shape. You could do lots of wiggles and then leave a middle section without any paint to create a bit of a highlight effect too. I'm dabbing in some more green along the edges, and I probably have a bit much water on my page, but that's okay as well. And I'm actually running out of paint with my green as well. I think I must have underestimated how much paint I would need for these. And a couple of leaves in the background. I've really got a range of greens happening now too, going from that really bright green through to a more earthy kind of green. And you can achieve that by just varying the amount of red that you put in there, the amount of blue, and I've got a whole video about colour theory as well if you need some more help with that. So I'm going to grab some pink of some description. At this point I'm really running low, so I'm just going to grab actually this brownish red and mix it in with whatever this is over here. This is like, I'm really welcoming you into my true painting process, which is a little different from my more planned, curated videos where I'm just winging it and seeing what happens, with varied success today. So I'm really just like jumping about my palette, seeing what's there, grabbing little bits of some color that's left and dabbing it in and seeing what happens, which is really what makes watercolor so fun, I think. Yeah, so I hope you have enjoyed this. I don't even know what to call it, unfiltered, maybe. I'll just add in a little bit of this brown sort of red color just for a little bit of depth in these stems while they're still wet. And I can tell which ones are still wet because they have a bit of a sheen to them. Just dabbing it in here too. And I think it's about time that I stop adding paint to the page, perhaps, but it's easier said than done stopping. I'm just adding some light brush strokes up the leaves that are still really wet. This is going to bleed a lot. The ones that have started to dry, it's not going to bleed so much, but because this is a really, really loose painting, it doesn't matter how much it does or doesn't bleed. And there we go, beetroot as requested by you. I'm always taking requests. Hopefully I'll be a little bit more composed next time, or maybe not, I don't know. It's been quite fun being loose and free painting today. I'd actually love it if you told me which style of painting you prefer. And yeah, give me some feedback in the comments, would be awesome. And hit like if you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos every Tuesday. Awesome, I'll see you next time.